Well, perhaps I should start a little earlier. As I say, we started then in 1974 until 1979. We started working with the Katinsgruppe, which was set up in the GDR film studios to make longer documentaries in the West. And it began with a series which was shown twice each month called Alltag im Westen. And it was an attempt to show life in the West very different to what one would normally see on West German television, or perhaps what people thought life was like in the West. We wanted to basically educate the population as far as possible about the realities in Western countries, that it wasn't all a paradise. Everybody driving Mercedes cars and living in luxury houses, and you could buy everything in the shops you wanted, etc., etc. So we were attempting to show the problems in capitalism, the problems of imperialism as well, problems of oppression, dictatorship. So that was, we started doing that first with the Cartins group, where we had the opportunity of the Alltag im Westen series. They were all 25 minutes each. So it gave us much more scope to look at problems in more detail. Yes, and I mean, again, it was wonderful for us because we were never told what to do. We would have conferences several times a year where we would discuss a program of programs for the forthcoming period. But that wasn't totally written as a blueprint which we had to follow. It was just a question of ideas. We came up with ideas which were either rejected or accepted, and so we made films on those subjects. But obviously the world moved in a different way to what we thought it might or what was planned, so we also had to react to events in the world. I mean, like I mentioned, the revolution in Portugal. No one knew that was going to happen, so we couldn't plan it. But obviously we couldn't ignore it because it was so important. And so things like that also gave us an opportunity to react very quickly and then report on these events. Yes, we were very much aware that, I mean, that's why, in a sense, the GDR population in the socialist bloc was probably better informed about the West than any of the others, because they could see West German television and West German reality as reflected through West German television. So it was for us, it was a bigger challenge to try and show that this West German reality was only part of the reality of this country. You know, the blacklisting of communists was never talked about. The lack of coming to terms with and dealing with the Nazi past was never dealt with. The fact that a lot of former leading Nazis were now in leading positions in West Germany, all that's part of the reality that wasn't dealt with in West German television. And so that was part of the challenge we faced in trying to show that, look, this is what this country is. It hasn't overcome the past. And capitalism isn't all golden paradise, that it does have a dark side to it. You know, there was drug addiction, there was bad pay, there was exploitation of foreign workers, and there was also the role played by West Germany in terms of imperialism. I mean, I've already mentioned with Namibia and South Africa, West Germany played quite a significant role in a number of countries in promoting or supporting dictatorships and oppressive regimes, not just in South Africa and Namibia, but also in Latin America. So those were aspects which we looked at. Obviously, it couldn't be done in a stupid black and white way because people could see West German television. They had a comparison. But as I say, we just wanted to try and explain that that was only one aspect of the reality, that you had to see the whole implication of capitalism. And it wasn't just a question of consumer goods in the shops or a Mercedes outside your front door. There was more to it. Well, I wouldn't want to exaggerate it. I think the audience rating for GDR television as a whole was not very high. But Alltag im Westen, one that the title itself was quite seductive, and people thought, oh, well, let's have a look at this. What are they showing us about the West then? And because they were lively programs, and we worked in a different way to most Western reporters. We had to, because we weren't in front of camera reporting, we were always working anonymously, in a sense. So we had to rely on interviews we did with people to relate the reality that they were living. So that whether it was West Germany or wherever, we would interview people on the street, people in the workplace, or people who were experts, and they would explain their reality from their point of view. Because the GDR public was also, they were very well informed, but they were also quite skeptical, if not suspicious, of their own media. They wanted to hear what people in the West were saying. They didn't want to hear their own reporters telling them what people in the West were saying, which is quite a different aspect. And that's why we could only do it that way. We couldn't write our own commentaries and report them face to camera, which made it quite a challenge. But I think it was popular, if you can call them popular, because it was a window on the world. I mean, we have to face it. GDR population couldn't travel. Most of them couldn't travel, and so for them, this was a window on the world if they wanted to see elsewhere. So that's why it was important, I think. And I think it did worry the West Germans as well, because they started their own series of programs, which I can't remember what they were called, but it was a sort of Alltag in the East, because they realized that they needed something to counter. You know, we knew that we'd got to be honest in the sense what we were doing. Obviously, it was a one-sided picture in the sense we all have our prejudices and our ideas, and we will see reality and view reality through that perspective. And as Marxists and communists, we saw the West in that way. But nevertheless, we knew that it's no use telling people lies, because once you tell a lie and you're found out, people don't trust you again. And we were very lucky working with the Cartins group, because it was, in GDR terms, quite innovative and quite adventurous, in the sense, you know, Sabine herself was very clear that people needed to be informed. People wanted the truth. And it's no use just giving them a completely one-sided picture or a completely uncritical picture. I mean, there were several battles with several of the films. I mean, one of the films, which I was only tangentially involved in, which was verdeckter Bundesbürger, which was a series of interviews in West Germany where they talked about their own reality, but also about the GDR. And some of the things were critical, and Sabine said, yeah, these have got to stay in, you know, because some people in the hierarchy in television, oh, we can't have that, it's critical of the GDR. And, you know, she'd say that this is silly, that's part of the reality. If we don't show anything critical or any uncritical comments, people won't believe us. But it was a continuous battle between those who preferred the censorship and those who saw that one had got to be much more open in the way one approached communications.